Did Adobe just blow up Luminar 4? Stay tuned and let's talk about it. Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Daniel Allen. I'm a Seattle-based photographer specializing in landscape and portraits and all things post-production, which includes Photoshop and all the other little third-party apps that I love to use to try and get my photos the very best that they could possibly be. One of those is Luminar 4. If you haven't heard, Luminar 4, when it was released, introduced something called sky replacement, which was a quick way for you to get rid of dull, boring skies in your landscape photos and replace them with something more interesting. And more so, it actually would attempt to kind of do some color grading on the image to make the sky replacement look better. And it was a huge breakthrough. I mean, it pretty much blew up everything with photography. I mean, we kind of went crazy with it. And in fact, it's really easy to go crazy with it because the functionality it gives you is just mind-blowing. So it's not perfect. You know, there were a lot of cases where it would not mask things out the way that it should. So things that were up in the sky or parts of the sky that maybe were detached, like looking through trees or whatever. But for the most part, it did a pretty good job. Problem was, if there was one of those things, like, you know, something that it missed or something it you know, put sky in that shouldn't have, there was no way to correct it. There was no way to fix it. You could mask out the effect, but if you did that, then you would mask out the color grading that it was applying to the image as well as part of that. So it wasn't perfect, but, you know, it was pretty darn close. It was pretty good. But with the latest version of Photoshop that just came out, and we're looking at, I'm going to cheat here because I was not ready to tell you what the version was. The 22.0.0 release of Photoshop, which dropped just a few days ago in mid-October of 2020, for those that are just finding this video a little bit after the fact. And it includes sky replacement, which, you know, that was kind of the big deal with Luminar. I mean, they have some other things that are really super cool, but sky replacement, man, that was the one that just blew everybody away. And now Photoshop, they're giving it away for free. Well, I mean, not really free, but if you have Photoshop, you don't need to pay for a third-party application to do sky replacement anymore. You can do it right in Photoshop, which, you know, did they just kill Luminar? That's a very good question. But let's take a look at the sky replacement feature in Photoshop and compare it to what Luminar does. And, you know, spoiler alert, they didn't kill Luminar, but it kind of depends what you're looking for. So that's kind of my caveat to this. Let's jump over and look at an example right now. So I have this lovely lighthouse scene, and I really love this landscape scene. I think it's beautiful. The sky is super drab, as you can see. One of the things you're going to notice right off the bat is the lighthouse is very close in tonal quality to the sky. And let's take a look at how both Luminar and Photoshop handle replacing a sky with something that's, you know, that close to the color of the sky. Let's just take a quick look. I'm going to hit Control J on this smart object. This is a smart object I brought in directly from Lightroom. I haven't done any edits on it or anything like that, so you know, I haven't done any tonal balancing or, you know, anything of that nature, which normally I do those things. I'm just going to rename this one just so we can keep them straight. I'm going to call this one Luminar 4, and I'm going to call this one Photoshop. And I'm actually going to put this Photoshop one into a group just because you'll see in a second, it makes it a little bit easier. All right, first things first, we're going to turn off the Photoshop one and we're going to just focus on Luminar and come up to filter. So they do have this new plugins panel that you can see here. And the plugins panel, I don't have anything in it right now because you have to get these plugins from their plugin store. So instead, you have to come over here to the filters. And if you, let me see, so like other plugins that I have, they have this legacy extensions. So like all of my Rabbit masks and infinite tools and all of those are over here. At some point, I expect that they will migrate over to the plugins panel, but we're going to come over to the filters, actually. We're going to go to Luminar 4, launch that up. And right off the bat, I'm going to give you the caveat that there are lots of things I could do with this image inside of Luminar 4 that give it value. I mean, make it worthwhile. I'm going to turn on the highlight and shadow clipping just so I can kind of see where things are at. I usually always do this just so I can have a really good sense of what's clipped and what's not as I'm working in here. But like, for example, my typical workflow, I would come in here to AI Enhance typically, and I would crank this up, which will kind of even out a lot of the tones here in Luminar. You can crank this up pretty good actually, and it'll do a fantastic job. But since I can't really do that in Photoshop, it would take a full editing cycle. I'm not going to do that. Some other things I would do is probably with the light, the smart contrast, highlights, shadows, things of that nature. Instead, I'm just going to apply only the sky replacement. So I'm going to come in here to my sky selection, and Luminar AI, the new version that's coming out, is going to supposedly change a lot of how this works, but all I can go off of right now is what Luminar 4 gives us to what offers us. So I think the one I liked before when I was playing around with this was this one. Yes, Dramatic Sunset 11. And right off the bat, you're going to see that in here, well, you know, it's not terrible. It's not really going through the lighthouse too terribly. You could even argue that some of that is just coloring. So if we relight the scene, yeah, it does look like maybe it is masking that out okay. But then down in here, it's not. So in the trees, so we need to play around these sliders, and you know, it's they don't give you a whole lot of like hard details as far as like what you need to do in what, you know, situation. I think they want to try and keep it all just kind of as magical as possible, where, you know, it just works. And I can't fault them for that. I mean, that's what sells the product, and you know, but you know, overall, that's it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I'm going to try and relight the scene just a little bit more. There we go. Now this particular one's got a water spot here, or you know, some kind of spot on the actual JPEG, which is kind of frustrating if you think about it, because you know, you pay a lot of money for these sky packs, and then it's got a flaw in it like that. But you know, that's okay. And we'll look over here at the haloing. Normally on sky replacements, there is a bit of haloing around the edges where it's trying to blend and not doing a very good job of it. So there is some going on here, but not quite as much as I would have thought. So that's good. Now we do have some blending issues in here. And I think that is just a I think that's just a result of it not having a really clear defined skyline to try and mask to. So we could probably we could try and raise the position maybe a little bit. There we go. So if we raise the position, it kind of, that helps with some of it. There we go. That's a little bit better. But I'm going to call that good, and I'm going to exit. Obviously, plenty more that we could do with this image if we wanted to, but let's go ahead and apply. Okay, and here we have it. This is Luminar's sky replacement. As you can see, it's, you know, oops, it's not too bad, right? I mean, that looks pretty good, I think. So let's move on and see what Photoshop can offer us. So here we are on the Photoshop. layer. Again, it's a smart object, a copy of the original one. And we are going to go to filter and where did they put it? Oh no, it's an edit sky replacement, I think. Yes, here it is. Sky replacement. And right off the bat, you'll notice that, well, I've got the one I was using in the other application. You can come in here and it's kind of weird the way you do it. You have to go and create a new sky document. So I've added a few. So you click on new here, you browse to where the JPEG of the sky is that you want to bring into Photoshop. And you can add it to its own group. So here I've added to dramatic sunsets because that was the name of the file originally. It was in the dramatic sunsets collection. And here's that same one that we had in Luminar. So now I've loaded that up. And right off the bat, we can see, now they don't by default have any, well, let's just take a look. So we got shift edge, which is going to, I'm assuming, it looks like it changes where it blends off at, possibly. So if we bring this back to 0, the default value, and it won't let me zoom in, unfortunately. That's kind of annoying. I can't zoom in and look at specific places, specific things. So Adobe, that's a bug. We need to be able to zoom in and see how well it's masking stuff out. So we're going to do these adjustments. But we've got fade edge. So, how much of a, fading effect do we have from the replace sky to the background? So you can have it harsh or, blend it more. So that's kind of nice. You can adjust the brightness of the sky. You can adjust the temperature, warmer or cooler. And it doesn't look like the double click to reset works, which that's a bug if you ask me. Everything else, when you double click on it, it resets it. You can change the brightness of it. So if it's too bright for your photo, you can bring it down. That's a nice feature. I mean, Luminar does it too, but it's not very well implemented in my opinion. So you can adjust the scale. You can flip it. Just you got to remember when you're putting in these skies that the lighting has to match the lighting of your image. So you can't have the light coming from the right in your original image and then have the sun on the opposite side. It doesn't work. Another thing that you see a lot, even in the promo stuff from Luminar, just the lighting is clearly behind the camera, but yet the sun, when they were doing a sky replacement, the sun is off, in front of the camera. So, little things like that add to the believability of your replacement. So you don't have a sun in your background if there was no sun there. In this particular image, this was on the West Coast. It was sunset. The sun was setting. And so all of this lighting is correct. So that is actually where the sun would be. So it works out good here. You can change the mode. You can either do screen, which that looks hideous. I'm not sure why you would ever want to do that, or multiply. Lighting adjustment, color adjustment, and how you want to output it. So you can output it to new layers, or you can create a duplicate layer. I don't know exactly what all those things do just yet. So now for the lighting adjustment and color adjustment, this is for the foreground. So we can actually go and colorize this a little bit. And I've noticed it does a bit, but it doesn't do a whole lot. Not like Luminar does. But it does do some color grading of the foreground based off of the image that you have. So, and same thing with lighting, I'm assuming. Well, that's a tough one. These don't really do much, in my opinion. But one of the things, though, that you do get, which is really cool, is this sky brush. So you can use this brush to reduce the sky area or change the area of the sky that's being replaced. So for example, if I wanted to remove the lighthouse, I could come in here and, oops, I think I need to remove it this way. So I can say this part is not part of the sky. And you know what? That is something that is sorely lacking in all of Skylum stuff, is this ability to remove stuff. I'm just going to come in here and just completely hard remove everything from this lighthouse because it's not part of it. There we go. And that looks good. Now I'm assuming I could also probably do something similar. Let's feather. Let's make sure that we have a feathered edge. Can we feather it? Hardness. Let's feather it a lot. And let's come in here and just do this, because this is not part of the sky. This is part of the water. And there should be a way of positioning this. Now if we come and fade the edge a bit more, and maybe lower the brightness a bit. Interesting. So say if we do shift edge minus 100, you can kind of see what it's doing here. Fascinating. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a way of, what's this? Hand tool. What's the hand tool? Oh, that just moves the whole canvas. Ah, there's a way of zooming. So now we can come in here and we can fine tune our mask, which is nice. So if we wanted to brush out the sky even more closely, we can come in here and say, okay, well, we do want the sky behind this glass here. So let's put it in here. Oops. Well, so now that's interesting. The masking. Huh. So it looks like we'd have to do a lot of fine tuning here to get this masking done the way that we want. So I can come in here and I can kind of bring it in on these edges a bit into here. I have to come in each of these individual glass panes and bring the sky in behind it. Same with over here, because you don't want to run the risk of people looking at your photo and being like, oh, there was a sky replacement done. That's not a real sky. Because what's the point, right? I mean, it's going to look horrible at that point. So the idea is for it to look natural. The idea is for nobody to know that that's not really how the photo was. But I will show you something that we can do after the fact. So we can hit OK here. And if you look, it gives you this whole sky replacement group. If we zoom back out again, we can see that it's all in this little sky replacement group folder. So here we have our sky that we're replacing, and then the foreground lighting is it looks like this is in multiply, but if we do normal, yeah, I'm not I guess we have to, there we go. So it's only 65%. So that's kind of what it was doing. And that looks like, okay, so it looks like that was kind of trying to mimic where the sun was in the sky that we're replacing, that's pretty cool. That's the mask for it. We can turn that off and come back to multiply here, turn that off, so we can kind of see exactly what it's doing. And that was like around 60, I think it was. So we'll put it back. And then this foreground color, which this is, this looks like it's just a simple curve adjustment layer to try and get the foreground to match what was in the background, what the new sky has in it. So, I mean, it does do some stuff, but if we look at that compared to what Luminar does, I mean, they're kind of night and day difference, really, if you think about it. So Luminar 4, I mean, it's completely gone and redone the coloring, the color grading for the foreground. The sky is blended beautifully, but you don't have control. So if this lighthouse, if I have decided that this lighthouse was being included in the sky as part of the sky and was getting replaced, like, and there was a cloud going through it, let's say, or something of that nature, there's no way of overcoming that. There's no way of fixing that issue. But turn that off. That's annoying. But with the Photoshop version, we did have the sky brush where we were able to come in and say, hey, this is not part of the sky, or this is part of the sky. So, but it's a brush. It's not super useful, really, until you hit the OK button and you come into here. And now what you can see is we've got a mask generated, and we can edit this mask. We can come in here and say, we can come in here with a, let's see, a dodge and burn brush, for example. And we can say, you know, this is, I want this stronger right through here. I don't want it quite so subtle. I want this stronger. Maybe not that strong, but we can come in here and clean up this mask and get it exactly the way we want. So that when we come back here, now you can see that, I mean, it's, now we've got a haloing effect going on, but we don't have this like fade that's happening. The fade was too much. So we have some, we do have some control over this. I'm going to put that back just a little bit. So we got haloing. If we wanted to, we could come in here with our brush on the sky. Take a brush. I want it much smaller than that, and I want a really low flow, like 3%. And I'm going to come in here with white, and I'm going to just kind of come over some of this and hide some of this haloing. And you can just touch this up. But if you're not careful, you're going to come into the foreground, and then you're going to have problems with that. So you want to make sure that you are, and you don't want to muddy it up too. I just muddied it up. So I'm going to back those changes out. And instead, what I'm going to do is turn off all of the sky adjustment features, and I'm going to do a luminosity mask. So there's lots of ways of doing luminosity masks. I'm just going to use my favorite. It's the TK TK menu, or TK. I'm going to use my TK actions. Let's see here. That looks good. And I want to bring this down, and I want to bring this up. I'm trying to zero in on just the right parts that I want to capture. That looks good. I'm going to put that to a selection. And now I'm going to come back over here. And okay, so the selection apparently has got includes some of the haloing. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand this. We're going to expand this a little bit. So we're going to come over here to select, modify, expand, and we're going to do like, 5 pixels is probably good. Hide the marching ants with Control H. And now when we come up here, we should be getting rid of the, yeah, there we go. Getting rid of the halo. Oops, now you can see over here, we don't have any of that. The sky's masked out up here, so I don't have to worry about that right there. But so that took care of that. I can actually probably, there we go, make that nice and strong. So that that took care of the haloing. Next thing, all right, next thing we want to do is we want to try and mimic some of this color grading that we have going on in here. So so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a gradient map. Turn the opacity all the way down, and we're going to find the darkest part of our sky, which is going to probably be over here. And we're going to find more of a mid-tone, which will probably be over here. Let's see. So I want the darks to be more blue, so I'm going to try and sample some of the bluer areas. And then we're going to come up into like this sort of area, and maybe have this. And then finally for the very end, we're going to have this bright yellow in here. And that's, so now typically I will go and create something that's way darker. Just to kind of make sure that they have the luminosity that we need. So sometimes I'll even just keep it white and black. There. And let's turn this up. And that looks absolutely hideous, but if we bring it all the way down and just slowly start to bring it in and switch this to color or hue, one of the two. So if you've ever wondered what the difference between color and hue is, so color includes luminosity and hue. So color is luminosity and hue, and then hue is just hue by itself. So it it just shifts the actual color value with its same luminosity to somewhere else on the color scale. Color will switch the color hue plus change its luminosity. So it just kind of depends what it is you're looking for. I think that is probably going to work, and I need to move it down under here because I don't want it affecting the sky. I just want it affecting behind the sky. And if we if we increase the opacity of this slowly and gradually, we can kind of see, you know, what that is doing. Now, of course, we would want to probably fine tune this. I would probably end up doing 2 separate gradient maps. I'd probably do one for the foliage and then another one for the water. But this is just kind of to try and demonstrate or kind of show you kind of what Photoshop is able to do. I'm going to delete that because it's not really all that useful for us. It was just more of a demonstration purposes. The main thing though is here's the differences. So you have more control with Photoshop. Like I can control what the sky replace is, what parts of the sky get replaced. And I can fine tune that with like luminosity masks and you know, other things that I control. But what I can't do, you know, it doesn't automate a lot of it for us. You have to put in the time to make it work. Whereas with Luminar, it does a lot of that stuff for you. So, you know, that took us from here to here, and it did a lot of the heavy lifting. So then we're back to this old question, the original question I posed at the beginning of the video. Did Photoshop just kill Luminar? Absolutely not. Because I can come back in here into the Luminar filter, and there's a whole lot more that I could do with this photo using Luminar. And I don't think Photoshop's by any means figured it all out. I think it's an excellent start. They've done an excellent start, but there are some things that it needs to be able to do that it currently doesn't. But at the same time, I think they're very conscious of the fact that people do not want, or professionals do not want, the computer doing it for them. They want some of the tools kind of automated in a way that, you know, takes all the heavy lifting out of it. You know, for example, I know that I want to put this sky into my photo. Help me do it in a good way. And Photoshop's delivering on that. They're putting the sky in, they're helping with the masking. They're basically automating a lot of the layers for us. They're not changing it. It's all non-destructive, if you noticed. It was all, you know, layers. You could have done that yourself in Photoshop. But it's just automating it for you. So I think that's really very cool. But in Luminar, see, I can come back into here. I can use this AI accent to kind of boost up some of the tonal quality of this image. I can lower the contrast a little bit to try and even out some of these tones. Again, I would turn on the shadows and highlight clipping just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I would probably maybe reduce color cast just a smidge. And in the greens, I would definitely probably darken those greens some because they are a little too out of control. Although I don't want it in the sky necessarily. So I would probably come in here, darken these greens, brighten up these yellows. No, I might not even do that. Might actually shift some of those. There we go. Maybe that's better. And then probably paint this out in the sky. I don't think we want this up here. Maybe some of it. Just a little bit. And could maybe add just a smidgen of glow. Let's see here. Just to give it that little radiance pop. Not too much because we don't want to blow out the We don't want to blow out the highlights too badly. And let's see, before and after. Yeah, that gives it a really nice look. And then also split toning. So I want a little bit of blues in my shadows. Oh, come on. I want some blues in my shadows. And I want some yellows in my highlights. Not a lot, just a little, probably a little warmth too. Turn on some before and after, see how that looks. It's very subtle, but it works. And I'll probably come back here to these greens and drop their saturation just a little bit. Maybe even hint them over to blue. No? Maybe the other way is a little bit better. There we go. And add a little bit of blue to it. Not a lot, but a little. Some teal and purple, reds. So you can see the difference, a dramatic difference here with the befores and afters. So that's before the color treatment, and that's after. It just kind of gives it more of a sunsetty kind of feel to it, I think. And you know, I'm gonna call that good for right now. Could come in here and add some golden hour. It might be a little counterproductive at this point, since we've already kind of gotten our color grading the way that we want it. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that off. And I'm gonna say apply. And now it's going to go and export all of this and bring it back into Photoshop, and we can take a closer look at what it's done. There we go. So before and after. You know, I think it just did a fantastic job. You know, compared to what Photoshop does. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some tweaking and fine-tuning. I mean, we can, in Photoshop, we can make it do whatever we want, you know, so that's not an issue to me. I think it's going to get a lot better as people use it. They're probably going to have, there's probably going to be tons of tutorials. I'll actually probably, I'll try and work on a tutorial on how to use a sky replacement in Photoshop effectively, because I think there's a lot of room for growth there. A lot of room for people to kind of learn how to get the results that they want with this new tool that Photoshop has put in front of us in Adobe. So, you know, I think that's just fine. Did Adobe actually end up killing Luminar? No, absolutely not. I don't think so. Especially considering that they're almost developed for two different types of customers. So Photoshop is more, in my opinion, for the serious professional who wants to have the ultimate control over their photo and do whatever they want with it. Luminar, on the other hand, is more about the automation of it. They kind of pitch it as, you know, spend more time shooting, less time developing, you know, doing post-production. And there is a valid argument to that. However, you can't sacrifice control for the sake of, you know, fast. You know, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want to spend less time editing, but I also want to have full control over what my photos look like. Something's got to give. So for those people that, you know, don't like spending time in Photoshop and don't like spending time doing the post-processing, Luminar is a really good option for you because it does some really quality editing. And honestly, some of these, I mean, you look at the way that it does the relighting of the scenes and the color grading according to the skies that are getting replaced into it. You know, you can do that in Photoshop, but it takes a lot more time. There's more masking involved, and you know, you have to know more about what you're doing in order to get that to work. You know, at the same time, though, you know, if you're somebody who really wants to have the ultimate control over your photos, because the second you go and put out a photo where you've done a sky replacement and somebody goes and looks at it and points and says, "Oh, wow, they did a sky replacement," you know, that's going to just kill your credibility. The whole point is for people to not know that you did a sky replacement. And when you run into issues like, you know, things not being masked properly or, you know, haloing, things of that nature, where it's very easy to identify that, yes, that has been manipulated. It's not an actual photo. You know, you lose credibility at that point, and your photos are not taken as seriously. So the idea, in my opinion, is to try and have the best of both worlds, where you can do things fast but also accurately, and have the control that you want to get the results that you need. So I do use Luminar quite a bit, Luminar 4, and I will use Luminar AI when it comes out. But I try and be very cognizant of its limitations and what it can and cannot do, and come up with workarounds that work for me to get the most results out of what I want to do with it. So I hope you found that useful. I don't think Luminar is dead by any means. I think they've got a lot to offer, even the professional, the way that a lot of the AI structure, not AI structure, AI, the AI contrast or whatever it was that you saw me do here. I mean, the way it can relight a scene and just kind of even out tones and balance things out. I mean, it's the tool is phenomenal. It does a lot of really great stuff. Photoshop, I think it was a good step forward on their part. It was something they needed to do as far as introducing sky replacement. It seems like everybody's doing it. I saw On One has done it now, and there was one other that I saw that was doing sky replacements as well. So it's kind of the in vogue thing to do right now. I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's skies are fake at this point, you know, just because everybody's going to have tools at their disposal to replace skies. And so I would fully expect to see a lot of images out there with fake skies. But I guess that's kind of the key, right? Are you able to tell they're fake skies if you're looking at them? So if the sky replacement is done properly, if you know, it can look good and you can't tell it's a fake sky, then awesome. But for those people that don't have the control that they need, they can end up in a world of hurt with it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to take a closer look at what Photoshop's sky replacement does and how we can try and get the most out of it in our images. So watch for future videos of that. Also, there is this whole section in here for neural filters that I do want to take a closer look at. You know, as I'm able to come in and take a look at some of these, I will definitely do some videos to you know, take a look at them with you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notifications when I put more videos out there. And I'll look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care. Bye.